It's your Wednesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Happy to be back for another day. Hope everyone is having a good day out there today. Lots to get to on today's show. Randy Johnson from the Star Tribune joins me here in just a little bit to talk Gopher football. One of the hottest teams in college football right now, 4 in a row for PJ Fleck's team, knocking off Illinois this past weekend. Illinois was ranked before that game, not ranked anymore. The Gophers had never beaten Brett Bielema before that game. No longer true. 25-17, 4 straight wins. 3 of them necessitated fourth quarter comebacks. Max Brosmer seems to be at his best when things matter most, which is a good quality to have in your quarterback. Randy and I will get into all of that and much more on the Gophers. Chip Scoggins joins me in a little bit, too, on his Football Across Minnesota feature, talking about Macalester football and their unusual practice time, getting up before, in some cases, the sun comes up to get their football practice in, and just what that entails, how the players like it, things like that. So another great, unique tale from Chip, and he'll talk to me about that here in just a little bit. Gopher basketball thoughts at the end of the show. They have their opener tonight, the men's team. A baseball thought at the end of the show, too. First, though, what I miss, 2 things kind of stood out on my timeline, my social media timeline Tuesday. And it was obviously a lot of people tweeting about the election, but interspersed with that, like during the day, it was the NFL trade deadline, which happened to fall on Election Day. Could not believe the NFL did that, but the trade deadline this year was the same day as Election Day. But I guess, when it happens that early in the afternoon, nothing much is going to happen before then. So yeah, I kind of get it. And in the evening time, almost everything else on my timeline is, politics related, something else, people watching results come in. And then there's like the occasional, this is what happened to the Wild. Like people are like tweeting play-by-play of the Wild. It's like, oh yeah, the Wild happened to be playing right now. And I've obviously got plenty of people in my timeline who I follow that cover the Wild or talk about the Wild a lot. So it's like interspersed with all the election talk was Wild talk during the evening and NFL trade deadline stuff during the day. Let's get to both of those. The Wild lose 5-1. To the Kings. Not a great game for them. They were up 1-0 early, end up kind of falling apart. Special teams tells the story. Can't get it going on the power play. Give up power play goals on the other end. Gustafson not as sharp as he has been. Kaprizov takes a puck to the face. That derails his night. Just not a great night for the Wild, who had been terrific all season long, who've been maybe sputtering a little bit on the power play lately, and that caught up to them in this game. Don't want to draw too many conclusions from one game, but certainly not the kind of effort, not the kind of result they wanted. By the time Kaprizov returned in the third period, momentum was gone. Couldn't extend their lead early when they were dominating play. Couldn't get the power play going. 0 for their last 14 on the power play. They got to hope it's just a one-off, like Matt Zuccarello said. Hope it's just a one-off. They're 8-2-2 this season. This was the first game all year where they entered the third period trailing, which should tell you how dominant they've been. So, yeah, even a good team is going to lose. Not going to draw too many conclusions from this one, but certainly was not the way they wanted that one to go at XL Energy Center. Trade deadline in the NFL, no moves for the Vikings. I think that was not unexpected. They just don't have a lot of draft capital. They don't have a lot of picks to trade anymore. Any of the moves they've already made involve 2026 picks. They traded like a conditional pick that can become a 4th-round pick for Cam Robinson, the left tackle that replaced the injured Christian Darrisaw. That was last week. They had previously, a couple weeks ago, added Cam Akers for a conditional pick in 2026. Like right now, guys, they only have a 1st and 2 5ths next year. They're probably going to get maybe like a 3rd as a compensatory pick for losing Kirk Cousins. So they will have a little bit more. There's ways to finesse, add picks from future years, things like that. But they just don't have A, a whole lot to offer, and B, they already had kind of made their move. So I wasn't surprised that they didn't add. A lot of teams did, though, including Detroit. They had Zadarius Smith. That's a big add for them. I know he's a veteran kind of toward the end of his career, but another pass rusher making up for the loss of Aiden Hutchinson, their excellent pass rusher who was lost for the season a couple of weeks ago. That is a big deal for them to kind of bolster their pass rush. So they do add more there, looking like the front runner in the division. They dominated the Packers this past weekend. Pat made the Packers look bad in that game. The Packers kind of slipping this year right now, even though they're 6-3. I don't have a ton of confidence in them right now either. So teams definitely added. The Vikings did add to their specialists. John Parker Romo brought in, sounds like Will Reichard, their excellent rookie kicker who missed a couple kicks in that game on Sunday night, even though the Vikings won. He's dealing with a quad injury. Sounds like he is headed to injured reserve, will miss at least 4 games. So they're bringing in a new kicker mid-season until Will Reichard is healthy. That will be interesting. And a new long snapper probably too. So the whole operation will look different for the kind of these middle weeks. They got to hope that they're good enough that the kicking game isn't too much of a factor, that it's not going to win or lose you a game against some of these lesser teams that are going to be playing. And B, they have to hope that these guys are professionals and they'll come in and do a credible job. You would expect maybe not the same level of accuracy you were getting from Will Reichard, who had not missed a kick, like I said, until that Colts game, until he started to feel that strain in his leg. But, you got to hope that they're at least going to give you a credible performance, get you through until that time. So a lot of teams adding. The Vikings has already done really their big adds, if you want to call them that. I think the left tackle was a big deal. They kind of are who they are now, 6-2 going into this game this week against the Jaguars. First of 3 road games, by the way. Jaguars, then Titans, then Bears. You got to like their chances in all 3 of those games, even though they're road games. I would expect them to be the favored team in all 3 of those, even though the road games. The Bears really hitting hard times right now after a decent start against bad competition. Jaguars have been up and down. I think Trevor Lawrence is still a good quarterback, but I think they can solve him. Titans are kind of a mess. They don't really have their quarterback situation sorted out either. So a chance to be good in these games, win a bunch. Going to be the next showdown game, really. Yeah, I think the Cardinals game could be decent on December 1st, but you got that showdown game against the Falcons looming on December 8th, the Kirk Cousins Bowl. So lots of fun stuff coming up for the Vikings, and they'll have to do it without any new trades from Tuesday and with 2 out of 3 new specialists, including for the short term, a new kicker. Let's talk about Gopher football with Star Tribune reporter Randy Johnson. 4 wins in a row now, Randy, and we can't dismiss this as just some sort of blip or fluke. I feel like this is kind of an identity forming now. You've got a team that in the Gophers that has won 3 of these 4 with the fourth quarter comebacks. They've trailed in the fourth quarter in 3 of these 4 wins over USC, UCLA, and now this last one against Illinois. Finally beating Brett Bielema in 10 tries. Not all of those, of course, during the PJ Fleck era, not all of those against Illinois, of course, but crossing some hurdles, becoming bowl eligible. A lot of it, again, the offense, mixed, of course, with the defense. But Max Brosmer continues to make plays when it matters most, even if that wasn't his best game on Saturday.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive the way he was able to be at his best when they needed him at his best, and that was on that their next to last possession where they're down after Illinois capitalized on the botched fake punt and went down and scored to get up 17-16. Very impressed with his throw to Daniel Jackson and Daniel Jackson's catch on the sideline for a 37-yard gain to set up that touchdown. But yeah, on that play, that pass just right drop in the bucket. Jackson fending off the guy with one arm. Basically doesn't tip off that the pass is coming. He keeps his arms, at his side, slows down a bit. Doesn't sell it with his eyes either. Makes a one-handed catch, and then they get in a great play call on the touchdown pass from Brosmer to tight end Jameson Gears. They do play action rollout on the tush push formation, and
right.
Gears is sitting there wide open to walk it in, almost like the play at UCLA with Darius Taylor, just kind of walking one in on a little swing pass.
And we've talked a lot about Brosmer on this podcast, but just kind of looking at what he's accomplished. Again, 3 regular season games left. We'll get to the remaining slate here in a minute, but I feel like we're watching one of the better quarterbacking seasons the Gophers have had in a while. I mean, Tanner Morgan, 2019 certainly stands out. I think he went 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions that year, throwing to a couple of really, good NFL caliber, NFL drafted wide receivers in Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson. This is up there for me right now. I don't know where you put this, but he's certainly putting together a season that is up there for recent vintage, at least.
Yeah, the record might not end up the same as, we all have to remember that team was something special, 11-2 and finished number 10 in the country. That hadn't been done here since 1962. So, that's the one thing that puts that one above a little bit, I would say. But I would say that this one, Brosmer's been more well-rounded, I would say. He's checking down a lot. He's using all of his weapons. He's turned, I believe Elijah Spencer into a very, very good weapon at that second wideout spot. He's finding the tight ends, not just Gears, but he's hooked up with Nick Caller up the blocking tight end a bit. He processes information very quickly, and he can move on to each progression. The throw to Taylor against UCLA was the 5th option on that route or on that play. So he's been. He was sold here as a guy who senior leader who's gonna be very good mentally with everything, and that's shining through right now.
I'm curious, we don't know this right now, and they have 2 very good, one commit, one in the building already, young quarterbacks. Is given the success he's having this year, given the way college football has gone, how do you think they approach quarterback next year? I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. This was kind of off script, but I'm just kind of processing this. They got to be tempted to do this again, don't they?
I would think, I'm pretty sure that, their plan is Drake Lindsay now, but
yes,
when it works this well, you have to, if you have a ready-made quarterback and come in here, I know you don't want to be doing that every year because if you miss on one, you're kind of in a tough spot. But if you hit on one like this, it's it does make you want to do it again. It's just they've had such success with him.
Yeah, I agree. Aside from the quarterbacking play, they got the running game going. They did enough on defense. I mean, it's not a one-dimensional thing by any stretch. How were they kind of able to fix some of the things that weren't going well at the start of the year?
I think on offense, I think Max has been a lot more accurate. He's not missing as many throws. He missed a few at Illinois. A lot of that Illinois had guys covered pretty well. That's a decent defensive secondary they have there. I think you see a guy like on defense, Cody Lindenberg. Obviously, he's twice the player he was last year when he was banged up and missed 7 games. He's as the season gone along, he's been a lot more effective. It seems like he's got a speed back. He's got just playing at a very high level. Justin Wall, he's come back from his injury very well, and he's making a huge impact. And then you look at their depth at safety is really carrying them. Kerry Brown, 2 huge plays last week, a 3rd down stop and then a 4th down pass breakup to get him the ball back. Then you have Coy Parrish, it may be a bit quieter of a game at Illinois, but he's something that everybody back there has to account for, or he's going to swipe the ball.
I got to admit, 4 in a row made me wonder if they'd get any votes in the poll. I didn't see them get any votes. They're obviously not in the top 25 yet, but couldn't be that far away if they put another win or 2 on the board, right? And they got Rutgers on Saturday, which is certainly an opportunity. Yeah,
I would think they would get there. I have a vote. I did not vote in the top 25. I had Iowa at 24. I was the only one in the AP poll that had Iowa at 24. I couldn't put the Gophers at Iowa because of the head-to-head results. Iowa beating the Gophers, and they have the same record. I did see that the coaches poll had the Gophers with 14 votes and Iowa with 13, which is interesting to see. But yeah, I think they're not far at all from getting into the top 25. There's kind of a logjam of teams with 3 losses, so it's not a given that they get in, but if they get to 7-3, it'll be a very persuasive argument.
Well, and if they're going to get there, they're going to have to beat a lot of familiar faces. We talked a little bit about the Rutgers game last week as we kind of looked down this, up and down the schedule. But it's no secret that there will be some So if revenge is maybe the wrong word, but it's a week where emotions could come into play a little bit. How do you think they kind of keep that in check and kind of keep doing what they've been doing?
Yeah, it was interesting yesterday at PJ Fleck's weekly press conference. He didn't really want to talk much about Rutgers. He wanted to say one game. It's keep their focus.
Shocking. I'm shocked, Randy. I'm shocked that he would want to keep the focus.
As for revenge, I think the revenge would probably be on the mind of the Rutgers quarterback, Ethan Keller. I'm sure there has to be some hard feelings there that they moved on from him. Basically, PJ, told him he was bringing in others for competition. My understanding is that prompted Ethan and his family to move on. Basically, he found a landing spot. He started the season pretty well. It's been they've lost 4 in a row, and he hasn't been quite as good as he was earlier. Accuracy's been a bit of an issue there too, as it was here. I'm thinking, and then you have all the coaching, ties, Shiano and Fleck, Shiraka and Fleck, Corey Heatherman, the Gophers defense coordinator, was linebackers coach there last 2 years. You've got Joe Harris-Semiak, their defense coordinator, was assistant on the defensive staff here. So there's just all kinds of ties there. It's I just think that it's going to be the Gophers just want to take care of business. That's kind of the approach they're looking at right now.
I said a few weeks ago, I thought 7 wins would be the mark of a successful season. I'm going to stick with that. Like if they get this one, that's 7. I'm pretty impressed. But I think there's also now the inclination to get greedy. You can kind of you don't want to move the needle on what you call a success, but you can definitely move the needle on what you think is possible. And 8 is not out of the question. Now Wisconsin's not playing great. Penn State's not a game where you just say, you can never win that game. You got to take care of business against Rutgers. They're going to be about a touchdown favorite. But if you do that, 8 is far more realistic than I think it was before a lot of these toss-up games went in their favor. Yeah,
it's you look at it, they've only really been worked over one game, and they even had the halftime lead against Iowa on that one, and then just couldn't get anything done in the second half. They were, you could argue that they could have beaten Michigan if things would have fallen right on the penalty or the onside kick call. They could have beaten North Carolina with a made field goal that
should have beaten North Carolina. I'll say that should have beaten North Carolina. But yes,
it's basically Then you can play the other game too, that they've won some games that
of course. Yeah.
But they 8 wins would be a very good finish to put them in a nice bowl. 9 wins would even be better. I would say if they get to 9 and there's 4 Big Ten teams in the playoff, they'll be in one of the Florida Bowls. It would be my guess. If they get to 8, they could be could be in one of those Florida Bowls maybe, but more likely either like the Duke's Mayo in Charlotte or the Music City Bowl. And I think we all know what one that the fans want to go to if it came down to those 2.
I would think so. Well, it's turned into a much more competitive, fun season than I thought. They're bowl eligible already, so whatever happens from here, they've already exceeded last year's win total, kind of changing the narrative of the year, certainly from where it was. It's funny. I had some friends. We went to that North Carolina game, sat in the stands, and every time they've won recently, they're like, "We want our money back for that game. We wanted a better game. We want a better outcome than what we saw against North Carolina." Yeah,
that was a tough one. I mean, you look back, and North Carolina hasn't done much this year since then. So it's one they look at. Yep, that one definitely got away. They I think right now this team would show up much better.
I think they beat North Carolina by 2 touchdowns.
Max wasn't at his best that game. His accuracy was off a bit. I'm sure there was some opening game jitters with the new team.
Yep.
And they just they had trouble stopping the run in the second half, where O'Mary and Hampton just kind of ran wild on them.
Hampton had a big game last week, if I'm not mistaken, too. So it's not like they would have just cruised past them. But I think if they play now, they win by 10 or 14 points. But they don't. It's part of the season. It's part of the journey. Randy, appreciate it. We'll see how this game goes Saturday, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good, Mike. Thanks.
Good stuff from Randy. I think it's interesting to think about that subject we got into about the quarterbacks and what they might do going forward. It's a delicate balance. Like if you keep bringing in these veteran guys like Max Brosmer, you might have short-term success, but you'll also have a hard time developing someone who can be a 2 or 3 year starter, and you're going to have a hard time retaining those guys that you sign because they're going to want to go somewhere else to get a chance to play. So it's a delicate balance. I'll be interested to see what they do next year because it's no secret. Like Brosmer is having one of the best quarterbacking seasons here that they've had in a while. Certainly the best, I think, since Tanner Morgan's year in 2019. I can't think of a lot of better ones before that. He's been really impressive, especially when it matters most. How will that translate into their plan going forward is an interesting thing to ponder.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
It's Football Across Minnesota time with Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist. Chip, I understand that the feature this week is on a team that gets up before sunrise to practice football. Now, I get up before sunrise to make a podcast, but all I got to do is like roll out of bed, have a little coffee, do a little reading, make sure I'm coherent before I start recording. I don't think I could. I don't think I'd do great practicing football that early.
Yeah, especially when you're in college. What time did you go to bed when you were a college student, Mike?
It varied. I had a couple of semesters where I had an 8 a.m. class, but generally speaking, I would try to sleep in if I could.
That's right. Yeah. So Macalester in the MIAC, this is the third season under their coach Phil Nicolaides that they practice at the first whistle is at 6:15 every morning. When Phil got to the program, he got hired in 2022. They had one turf field there, which in the afternoons they were sharing with the men's and women's soccer team. And he said they were trying to be considerate, so they wouldn't always try to, take the turf field for themselves. So they had a grass field there too, but it didn't have the lines. It wasn't set up. When you're trying to make teaching points and strategy, saying, hey, drop 3 yards, it was just, it was difficult to get a good practice. So he said, hey, we're lifting weights in the morning already. Why don't we just try spring ball practicing at 6 a.m. and see how that goes? And he fell in love with it. And so, this is the third season, where they've done it, or second full season. And players start getting there around 5:45 a.m. They go from 6:15 to 7:45, 7:50. Some kids have 8 a.m. but first class, but for the most part, most of them have 8:30 classes, and they get up, get it out of the way, and then they can focus on, school and having campus life, the rest of the day. And it's a challenge though. I mean, I talked to one of their players, a guy named Noam Breeson, a senior linebacker. He said he's used to it now, but, at first, cause you're just so conditioned to, whatever, get up, whatever time, go to class, and then you have practice in the afternoon, that he said, you cannot wait to do your homework late at night or you're going to be in trouble. He tries to be in bed at 10 o'clock, which is hard for a college kid to get everything done and be in bed at 10. He said, yeah, you can't hang out with your buddies late at night and do those things. You can't put off, you can't procrastinate doing your schoolwork and saying, oh, I'll do it tonight because you'll be in trouble. So they've had to reprioritize their time management. And, Macalester's 0-8 this year. They haven't won a game. So I don't know that there's any correlation, but the head coach says that, he thinks it's beneficial because kids can really focus on school, and obviously at Macalester that's such a big priority for them. But he also thinks it's aligning their behaviors, preparing them for life after football, where hey, you got to get up and go to work at a job, and so he sees the value in that. But it is a challenge sometimes. He says if he's making, he has a young daughter at home, a 10-month-old, and he's trying to play with her. He's trying to do recruiting calls on the West Coast. There might be a Netflix thing that you're trying to binge watch, but you have to be disciplined and not do that and get to bed so you are getting enough sleep.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. I mean, it's you do get used to it, but it is a lot to change. And I wonder too, like, how does that translate into game days? I mean, I was again like they're struggles over the years have been documented. They had that long losing streak many years ago. So I don't think it's necessarily performance based, but like, you know, if you're used to getting up to practice at 6, but your games aren't ever going to be until 11 at least, it's probably a little bit of a wake up call.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's any correlation there. Obviously, you mentioned it. I mean, there's challenges that they faced historically, but you know, the players say that the benefit is once you get your body used to it, that hey, when they go to those 8:30 or 8 a.m. classes, they're wide awake, whereas other kids are dragging in there and they're, you know, in their pajamas and they're sleepy, that they've been on the move here for a couple hours and they're you know, their bodies are awake and they're alert and attentive and all that, so they find that. So I imagine it's the same thing on game day too. I don't think there's any correlation there. I think it was really just honestly trying to find a solution to a log jam with the practice field, and they found some benefits in terms of the academic part of it, and then also really just once they're done, the coach says, you know, it's tough getting up that early, but at 8 a.m. they're done. And then you get the rest of your day and you think, hey, this is great. I don't have to come back in the afternoon for football. So, but it's, and we see, you know, the Gophers practice in the morning and other colleges have done it. But in these power conferences, I think the schools are more likely to, well, I know they are, to help with classes and majors and those type of things. Whereas Macalester, hey, it's, you know, you're not doing that there. So they have to schedule it at 6 a.m. versus 9 a.m. and get it done before class starts.
Football's got to work around classes.
That's right.
Vice versa. Good stuff. I'm looking forward to reading that, Chip. Quickly, who got your game balls this week?
We had some big time performances over the weekend. Minnesota Duluth quarterback Kyle Waljasper, 26 carries, 236 yards, 5 touchdowns. He passed for 184 yards and a touchdown in a win over Winona State. Big performance from him. Totino Grace, running back, a game that I happened to be at. Marquell Keaton, 10 carries, 190 yards, 6 touchdowns.
So 6 of his 10 rushes went for touchdowns.
Yeah, and a 19-yard average against St. Anthony. He's really that Totino Grace team is really talented. And then Bethel quarterback Cooper Drews, 38 passes, 38 completions in 44 attempts, 422 yards passing, 6 touchdowns. He also rushed for a touchdown against Carleton. So some big numbers. Guys had some monster performances this weekend.
Yeah, they did. I remember when small schools never used to pass. I love how you just get these wild numbers from some of these Division II and Division III schools now.
Yeah.
Awesome, Chip. Appreciate it. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks, brother.
Man, like I said, I get up pretty early to do the podcast in order to get it out the door, not literally, not figuratively, not literally. They doesn't have to go out any doors; just goes up through the proper internet channels. But in order to get it posted, hopefully by 8 or 8:30 every morning, I need to start by about 6 a.m. Yeah, I do some of it the previous day, but a lot of it I'm doing the morning of before it goes live. So I have to get up and do that, but I can't. I don't have to move my body the way that a football player does. I've tried being that 6 a.m. exercise guy. Does not work for me. I can't do it. I'm much better as a late morning or evening exercise guy. I can't do the early morning work, and my body's just not ready for it. I like it if I can do it because then it's just done. It's out of the way, so I get it. I get what Chip's talking about. These football players who may not love it, they love being done with it by 8 a.m. I love that feeling. I like being like, okay, I'm done. Like, I think my wife and I, before we had kids, we tried to be those people. We started signing up for these 5:45 a.m. cycling classes at our old gym. And we did it for 2 weeks, and we were like, oh man, it feels good. It's 7 a.m. We've got energy. We finished our workouts, but we just couldn't sustain it. It's too much. It was too hard on our bodies. We just could not adapt to it. It was not how we were wired. So props to these guys at Macalester for doing it, even if it's out of necessity of the shared field. I think it's a harder thing to do, especially because we are all wired differently. Let us finish with the cooler. Interesting report from Awful Announcing, picking up on something from the Major League Baseball Players Association, reporting that Players Union saying that TV deals, local TV revenue provides teams on average with 21% of their revenue. It's kind of in the process of the sale of the Twins. We're finding that out. It ranges from 12% to 32%, but on average, 21% of a Major League Baseball team's overall revenue comes from local media revenue. Now, obviously, for the Twins, that went down considerably. 2023, we knew they earned almost $55 million from what was then Bally Sports North, which has now been rebranded recently to FanDuel Sports North. But now, last year, we don't know the number, but we know it was considerably less because they slashed payroll. A big reason for the slashed payroll was going to be less money from the local TV rights. Now this year, in 2025, they are going to the MLB model where, they'll get some money from direct-to-consumer subscriptions. They'll get some money from local TV ads, the ads that the MLB is running. They'll get some money from distribution, things like that, but nothing like the guarantees they used to have year to year. So it will be interesting to see how that transforms, how that shapes player salaries going forward, but an interesting piece in Awful Announcing that I saw this morning. Also, Gopher basketball starts tonight against Oral Roberts, a team that could be pretty good this season. So a good early test for the Gophers. I think Lavelle Eniel III and I will talk Gopher basketball big picture on Thursday's show in our daily delivery debate segment. So we'll get into that on Thursday. Plenty of other stuff coming up on that show as well. So stick around for that. Until then, have a good, have a great, have a whatever rest of your Wednesday. Be back at it again tomorrow.